What if can I show some cartoons? Shall I show a few drawings? I brought a few slides. This is actually, I don't know if you can actually read from the back. This is my first ever cartoon in the Times. So that was back in October of 1993. And so this was sort of me imagining what the law was like from outside, really, trying to think. When I went to the bar, I was a pupil, and so the jokes became sort of about what it was like being a pupil barrister. So they were very much based on my own experience of going into court. And this was when, basically as a pupil barrister, I was essentially terrified of performing. And so if the case would get cancelled, I'd be delighted because I got to go home back to chambers and I got to collect my fee and didn't actually have to say anything, which was brilliant. That was the best day ever. And then I had to say to the client how sorry I was that it was all this expense wasted and they'd have to come back another day. I was just totally thrilled. So the jokes at this stage all came out of my experiences, and I was absolutely terrified of telling my chambers that I did this. Because I thought they'd assume that I would just make jokes about them, which indeed was the case. But it actually turned out to be a good thing because, as a pupil barrister, there's so much competition. I mean, this was 20 years ago, there was so much competition for the bar. Now it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just littered with Oxbridge firsts. And, all the candidates are clever. They're all brilliant. They've all got amazing CVs. So I'll just skip through. This was a silly thing that they did in the Telegraph because I had done some film animation in Hollywood, so I was getting these calls to go to LA, and somebody I forget who it was, somebody ran this thing saying that I was a young barrister turning my back on a lifestyle of fast cars, jacuzzis, and huge paychecks to remain at the bar. And this actually got picked up by some DJ, because I remember I was sitting in the car listening, and there was some guy on the radio saying, he was saying, God, there's this barrister, and he's got all these offers to go to Hollywood, and he's going to have fast cars and jacuzzis, and he wants to stay at the bar. What a moron! And then they played the next song, and I thought, my God, he's talking about me. And then I came back to work in films in London, and I did this book, Lawyers Uncovered, which is one of my favourites, and that's the back cover. So it's only funny if you see the reverse angle. Just really stupid ways of detonating your career. I won't show you any of that, but it's sort of this was the cover, or inside the cover. My dedication to Sarah, who really, really didn't want to leave the law. I didn't want to get her into trouble at her firm. I think it's too late for that now. So here's some pictures from Baby B. So there's old Smoothie on the left. And we really went round the houses on these drawings, trying to find what these characters would look like. There's head clerk on the right, who's, of course, the only one with a beard, because you're not allowed a beard at the bar. Facial hair is definitely forbidden, although clerks are allowed it, curiously.
I've given him a kind of rich... I saw it when he'd done that. We didn't talk about it, but I figured you got him... He's a real entrepreneur, so he's got a Richard Branson type of beard. So it's the little details that you suddenly, when you're looking at it, you go, oh, yeah. They're brilliant. And look at that big mouth, and he's the Tory MP, and his snooty nose in the air, and he's... Yeah. And this was Tim's idea for Baby B, and I knew this was a good idea because I was annoyed with it, that I hadn't thought of it myself. This idea that all pupil barristers should have L plates, because essentially when you're beginning, you're just beyond useless. I was always amazed by the solicitors who instruct me as a junior barrister. Cause why are you giving me money? I should be paying you. I'm completely useless, and you're paying me to go in to do this stuff. And so the L plates, I thought that was a lovely idea. And here's a joke I did that was actually for the ICLR, although it wasn't. This was sort of for the ICLR. It was because Sarah was reading 50 Shades of Grey and telling me how rubbish it was, and reading out excerpts of it at night, and then having told me what a terrible book it was, she went off and bought the other two. And read those as well. So I sort of got a free joke out of that. And then I did, this was fun. This is my latest book, the official Queen's Counsel Officials Lawyer's Handbook, which was done by, actually written by an American called Dan White, who's a brilliant, very, very funny lawyer. And he wrote this back in the late 80s. So it was about
becoming a lawyer, and I basically I anglicised it and brought it up to date, and so I sort of rewrote it. But this is the book that I like the most of my work. So it's a joint effort, but this is the one that I think is the funniest, because it is actually, and this is really Dan's work that I'm praising here, but it is actually, he's so accurate when he describes what you have to go through to make partner in a law firm. It's so unbelievably accurate. I mean, I would read sections of it out to Sarah, and it was like describing her life. She's not a partner, I should add. So it's been a lot of fun, and working with Tim has been huge fun, and we've become friends through it, and it's been a bit, love doing the Baby B stuff. Well, I was thinking, Gary, because you were talking about memorable cases. I think I'd spent my summer working at Disney on a movie, and it was literally the next day I had to come back and do this pupillage interview, and I couldn't remember anything. And they asked me if there were any particularly interesting cases that I had studied at law school that I would like to discuss. And the only case that I could remember was one which popped into my head. It was called Regina versus Brown. This is a 1993 decision. I don't know if anybody remembers this case, but it was a pretty fruity case involving some people in Bolton, I think of all places, who had been, it was all to do with what you could consensually do, what consenting adults could actually get up to. This was the only thing I could remember. It involved hammers and nails, and I won't tell you anymore. It was pretty grim stuff.
Rusty nails.
Rusty nails. It was, but so I actually mentioned, Regina versus Brown, and then realised that was the end of the pupillage interview. That was the moment when, this just great gaping void opened up in front of me, and I realised I'd blown the whole thing. They just looked at me and essentially as if you seriously want us to discuss Regina versus Brown. And that was the end. They just said, we talked about the weather for about a minute after that, and then I was shown the door. And I realised at that point that I actually had to go through my notes and try and come up with something intelligent to say at a pupillage interview.